Senator from Illinois.
Thank you, Madam President. This week we're going to be voting on some appropriation bills. It's rather large. They call them mini buses, but there'll be 6 or 8 appropriation bills bunched together, and they'll include things other than strictly spending measures. One of the areas that'll be addressed is the age that you must reach to purchase tobacco and vaping materials in the United States. It's known euphemistically as T21, and I've supported it for years. The notion of raising the purchasing age to 21 for these products, to me, just makes sense. We know that they are addictive, both tobacco, cigarette tobacco, and vaping materials have nicotine in them, a highly addictive chemical. So raising this age for purchase across the United States to 21 makes sense. But I'm disappointed as well. Although I originally sponsored this bill, there have been several revelations in the last few months which call for us to move far beyond the idea of establishing a new age for purchasing these products. And let me be specific. One of the things we've been working on is trying to address the shocking increase in the use of vaping materials and e-cigarettes by young people across America. It's been called a public health epidemic, not by a politician, but by the Commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration. That commissioner told us, as well as the Surgeon General of the United States, that this is an issue that cannot be ignored. Today, we estimate that nearly 30% of school-age children are vaping, more than 5 million kids across America. A group of young high schoolers came in to see me from New York last week and said, "Senator, you're all wrong. In our schools, it's a majority. A majority of the students are vaping, not only outside of the school, but even in the classroom. They have hooked up vaping devices to the clothing that they're wearing, and when the teacher turns his or her back on the class, they're puffing on their vaping materials, their jewels, and blowing the smoke, the white vapor, into the air of the classroom." It sounds incredible, but they told me it's true, and it happens all over the school, in the restrooms, in the cafeteria, in the classrooms. The reason it's happening is so many students are vaping now, and it is an addiction. As these students continue to vape, their appetite for the product grows. Kids are using these products for many reasons, and I can get into the psychology of it for a minute, but let me dwell on the obvious. The flavors that they are being sold on these vaping materials are designed for them, to attract children to Juul's products. Flavors like cotton candy, unicorn milk, whatever the heck that is, cool mint, mom's sugar cookies, and yes, menthol. According to the Food and Drug Administration, more than 80% of children who vape start with a flavored e-cigarette. Now, the vaping industry says, "Oh, you got it all wrong. You see, this is a non-tobacco product which people can use to get off cigarettes." Well, that sounds pretty noble, doesn't it? We want people to move away from something more dangerous like tobacco cigarettes. But when you look at the incidence of people using this product, it is minuscule in terms of adults with a tobacco addiction moving to vaping products. And the number of children, young students, moving from non-vaping to vaping is dramatic. As I mentioned, the official figures are 30% of high school students. According, as I said, to the Food and Drug Administration, one of the things that is luring young people to this behavior is the flavoring, the flavor pods. Does anyone believe these flavors are intended for some 50-year-old chain smoker who wants to give up on tobacco cigarettes? Flavors like Farley's Gnarly Sauce, Bubble Perp by Chubby Bubbles, Blue Raz by Candy King, Cotton Candy by Zonk. Some 50-year-old is attracted to cotton candy by Zonk? We know better. These flavor pods are made for kids, to attract kids, get them started, get them hooked, make them lifelong customers. Together with bipartisan colleagues, I have pressed the Food and Drug Administration and the White House for years to put an end to these kid-friendly flavor pods. Well, the tobacco giant Altria, used to be Philip Morris if I'm not mistaken, stepped in and bought the lion's share of the stock of Juul, the most prolific producer of vaping devices in the United States. Altria knows this business and how to attract kids because they used to make Marlboro cigarettes. Remember that cowboy? Designed to appeal across the board, particularly to young smokers. Well, now they've got a new gig. It's called vaping, e-cigarettes, and Altria has bought in a big way. They've been taking out ads to support raising the federal age to purchase tobacco products to 21. Wait a minute, a tobacco company wants to raise the age for purchasing the products? They do. They see it as inevitable, but it's also part of their market strategy. Now, it's the same policy I've supported, and I thank my colleagues, Senator Schatz and Senator Kaine, for joining in this effort, along with Senator Romney. But what we've seen is that Altria has invested $13 billion to acquire a 35% stake in Juul, which controls more than 70% of the vaping market. Tobacco is big in vaping. Altria and Juul together now believe the only way that if the only thing we do is just raise the tobacco age to 21, they'll be in the clear, that they can avoid the scrutiny for their targeted efforts to hook kids on e-cigarettes. I disagree. I've made clear that any T21, Tobacco 21 policy, must be coupled with meaningful provisions to get rid of the e-cigarette flavors now addicting our kids. They've turned to one of their allies, Senator McConnell, in this effort, who was an original sponsor on T21, but whose party resisted the effort to join the banning of flavor pods for e-cigarettes as part of the T21 deal in our appropriation bill. I fear that the spending bill will come before us and include just the T21 policy, and that, of course, doesn't address what's happening with vaping among children in America. If we are serious about sparing Americans, particularly our kids, from addictions to nicotine, it has to reach beyond tobacco cigarettes to vaping. It's a mistake not to do so. The public health community agrees with me on that. Any serious solution to skyrocketing rates of youth e-cigarette use must include the removal of kid-friendly flavors, not just the tobacco industry's preferred policy. And I'll continue to work with members on both sides of the aisle in pushing to do so. And finally, let me say, Madam President, on this subject, on September the 15th, President Trump held a press conference in the Oval Office on this subject of vaping. Sitting next to him, the First Lady of the United States, Melania Trump. She doesn't often stand up on political issues, but she's the mother of a teenager, and she decided to speak out against vaping. I thanked her, I praised her, along with the President. They did the right thing. On a bipartisan basis, we should thank them. But now we're not sure where the President is on this subject. We're not sure if he's going to continue his effort to end this scourge of e-vaping and e-cigarettes. I hope the President comes back to the position he announced in September. We need his help to ban these flavor pods. The recent appointee as FDA Commissioner, Steve Hahn, has told me personally and many of my colleagues, he thinks this is a serious issue. I believe he ought to be given the authority to exercise his legal right and power to stop these pods and stop these devices as quickly as possible. Madam President, I yield the floor. Suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.